Okay, Chairman, I can confirm that we are now streaming live on YouTube, and I'm handing the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this 22nd of September meeting of the Strata Joint Executive Committee. Just to remind you, please, that this is being simultaneously transmitted on YouTube, and therefore please to watch out for your language and to adhere to the code of conduct or your codes of conduct at all times. Also, please, if as a member of the public who hasn't yet seen the agenda, it can be found on the website at Cambridge District Council. Thank you very much. Right, so cracking on. First of all, do we have any apologies, please?
I have no apologies, Chairman.
Thank you, Amanda. Item 2 then is to look at the minutes for the last meeting, which was on the 16th of June 2020. Is everybody happy with those minutes, and may we note them, or would anybody like to pass any comments? Do just
move acceptance, Chair.
And I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Alistair. Okay, then in which case that is done. Thank you very much. Moving on to item, it was interesting, item, let's just have a look here. So I'm just having a look at the agenda again. Item 3 is questions from the public. So we have a period of up to 15 minutes for questions. Amanda, do we have anybody who has registered to speak?
No, we have no questions from the public, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. In which case we'll move on to item 4 to receive questions from members of the councils. Amanda, do we have anybody who has asked to speak at this stage?
Councillor Chris Clarence has submitted some questions, which I believe Lawrence is going to respond to. Okay,
is Councillor Clarence with us in person at the moment, or are we just doing it?
Yes.
Yes,
He
indeed,
is.
I am.
Okay, Councillor Clarence, welcome to the meeting. And
thank
can
you.
I throw to you, please?
It says Councillor Lawrence Whitlock, not Councillor Lawrence Whitlock is going to respond to those questions. My questions aren't directed at my supplementary questions. I've seen the answer given to the 3 questions that I've asked, which was basically a general answer around my questions. So my question 1 to the supplementary question, which is in fact being answered, is as follows. Further to question 1, I note the general explanation given. However, does the leader of TDC agree that this large sum of money to run Strata gives little comfort to members such as myself, who get no help from Strata with regard to usage of personal equipment that is needed to be used in connection with council work? Now that's addressed, if you like, to the leader of Cambridge District Council.
Okay, so well, look, let's take these one at a time then, Chris, shall we, if that's okay with you?
That would be good. If
let's do that. So
I spoke with Alan Connett this morning, and he said he was dipping in and out of the meeting, but Alistair's no doubt there to answer that question I've asked.
Okay, slightly unorthodox. Alistair, would you like to take that one, or would you rather just that we invite Alan to give Cambridge's point of view?
No, I'm more than happy to take that one. Thank you very much, Paul. And yes, so in terms of the budget for Strata, I think the first thing to mention is, of course, that this provision was set up by the previous administration at our council, and in fairness, I think at your council, Paul. And as far as the cost is concerned, it's about 5% of our budget, and I think in terms of speaking to officers, that is what the kind of area that we would be expecting to see in terms of IT provision. for a council of our size, and for the kind of work that we do, because we have our One Teambridge program of pushing IT through every, as it were, every corridor of our organisation. I think the concern, though, is that usually when one is buying a service, you like to see where it stands by comparison with everybody else, and that is not something that we have seen coming through from Strata, and in terms of where we are, I'd like to see in terms of our annual report from Strata, actually them showing us what good value they are, because I think for myself, I find Strata's service helpful, efficient, and the system sort of works. We certainly had to push quite a lot at the very beginning to get our meetings Zoomed, but we got them, and it all works, and it works, in my view, extremely well now. What does concern me a little bit about Councillor Clarence's question is around personal equipment, because after a huge amount of discussion over a very long period, during the last administration, it was agreed that Teambridge Council, where we didn't have any kind of provision, we had to provide our own IT equipment, that we would all get iPads for our use. And although we haven't quite got exactly what we were promised, because I personally can't use my phone, and so have to lug around a great big iPad everywhere I go to answer emails from constituents, there is no part in our plans or for any of our councils to have Strata maintain personal equipment, and for myself, I think that's right. I spend a lot of money making sure that the computer in front of me works properly, and works to the same kind of standard that the council laptop I'm currently talking to, and my Teambridge Council iPad, to all those kind of standards. So that's really what I'd say to Councillor Clarence. I do understand it's difficult, and I think the onus is on him to contact Strata and get training in terms of the iPad. We have Clive Newton, who is, I think everybody would know, is a really great trainer, and I'd like to see him contacting Clive to ensure that Chris has got the same kind of IT experience that I have, and that I'm sure you have, Paul, and Phil has.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dewhurst. I should have explained to people watching, Councillor Dewhurst is Deputy Leader at Teambridge District Council. So just to explain that.
Yeah, I'm deputising for the leader.
Deputising for the leader. Yep. Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Clarence. Can we have your second question, please?
Yeah, my second. All I would just say in that response is that Clive Newton is extremely helpful. I'm pretty au fait with the iPad, and that's not the question. The answer to the supplementary question that I asked in one. But having said that, we'll move on to my supplementary for question 2. If the general explanation given to my question 2 means that we are to stay with Strata, would the leader of TDC agree? Surely it is helpful for members to also use our own personal devices on which the agendas can be laid out simultaneously with our iPads on Zoom. Therefore, surely Strata could help members in providing some IT support for our own personal devices. And that is my question.
Okay, thank you. If I may, I'll just say I do sympathise, Chris. I very quickly went off depending on the iPad, and I used my own laptop through Outlook 365, which works absolutely brilliantly. But I did have to go into East Devon to get that installed for me. So maybe they could do that for you. I don't know.
Chair, can I
Bill,
make a
may I
point of
elaborate?
order here? Because
Yes.
I have joined the right meeting, haven't I? I thought I was joining a Strata executive meeting. I feel I've landed in a Teambridge Q&A with their leader. No, look.
Well, fair enough.
There's nothing, what I've heard, that, I mean, at best, by the way, it should have been asked at maybe a Strata scrutiny meeting. And surely these are now, this is I mean, I'd rather not play out the internal politics squabbling here in the Strata executive. Time is precious for us all. That's what I must insist on saying. We have the three leaders. I know we've got a deputy dealing with executive matters of the Strata company that we are directors or governing. These political issues, these local issues should be taken down and dealt with in the right place. If it becomes an ongoing issue, then of course we would have to deal with it, Chair. But otherwise, these meetings are just going to not deal with the things that we. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
May I respond to Councillor Philip Byard?
Well, hang on a second.
With respect, please, briefly.
As Chair, just to say, we've got 15 minutes for this item. I'm going to knock a minute off for Phil just then. So I'm happy to go for another 4 minutes, if that's okay, Chris, for you to.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. With respect to Philip, my IT.
Well, hang on. I don't particularly want a cross sort of boundary squabble either. Alistair, would you like to come back on Chris's last question, please?
Thank you very much indeed, Paul. I agree with Phil in the sense that this is definitely not the place for it, but it is within the constitution of Strata that local members can ask questions, and I think it's really important that they do. In terms of personal equipment, my own personal view, and I've said it all the way through because I used to be on the Strata Scrutiny Committee when this was discussed, was I think it's up to members to look after their own kit, and as far as I'm concerned, I didn't want to have council IT. I was more than happy to have my own and maintain it to the kind of standards that it should be maintained. It costs a lot of money to do that, but that's what I personally think. In terms of Councillor Clarence, we have given him the tools to do a job. If he wants to use his own equipment, he's perfectly capable of doing that. And I'm actually looking at the agenda on my own equipment. So I've got three. I've got a council laptop where I'm on this meeting. I've got a Teambridge Council iPad where I'm looking at emails and messages coming through, and I've got my own equipment with the agenda on. Councillor Clarence can do that, and Clive will happily show him how to do that, and if Clive won't, I will.
Okay, thanks, Alistair. I have to say, not ganging up on you, Chris, at all.
I think you are. With respect, I think you are ganging up.
I'm just trying to help you.
I hope
it's helpful to say that I've got exactly the same line. I've just literally got a couple of laptops with this Zoom thing. So I do know they will help you to get your own laptop to work. I mean, that is a fact. Perhaps that hasn't.
Well, the Zoom connection failed at the ONS Strata Committee, and I had to drop out of the meeting. The chairman didn't pause the meeting as he should have done, so I was unable to cross-question at the overview and scrutiny meeting. Well, I'm not very happy about what happened there at all. I can't get any help from BT, who are my internet connector. I've rung them up. They've run various tests on the line. Why did my connection drop out of Zoom? That is it. May I move to my third question?
I'm trying to help you some more. Lawrence, are you happy at my request as chair of this meeting to take on personal responsibility to get in touch with Councillor Clarence after this meeting and see if we can get these problems for him resolved? Is that okay for you, Lawrence?
If you can hear me at the moment, one of the challenges that we do have for the officers at East Devon, you bought an enhanced service to enable you to access the Modern Gov, etc. from personal devices. You bought Office 365 licenses and an additional Mimecast security module. we actually put that proposal to Teambridge in front of their scrutiny committee, and it was not accepted. So there's a reason why some of the councillors at TDC cannot get the level of service that we deliver to East Devon, because there was this enhanced level of service that was requested post the delivery of the iPad solution to the councillors.
Okay, that's cast some light on that. Councillor Clarence, can we have your third question then, please?
Councillor Arnott, can I just interject there? So it was in fact the member of Councillor Clarence's own party who chaired that particular overview scrutiny meeting, and Councillor Clarence sat on it and voted against it. So these things, sometimes you get what you pay for.
Okay, I can feel referee Phil from Exeter coming in with his whistle in a minute. Okay, a final question, please, Councillor Clarence.
Yeah, given that Strata is not expected to deliver a profit and still costing 3 councils an overall sum of 6.8 million per annum, would the leader of TDC agree with me that as a member, we are not receiving value for money, i.e. not enough support to enable members with what equipment we have to function properly as a councillor, and that we need some support to maintain our own personal devices?
Okay, I think on that one, I'm not going to go back to TDC if it's okay, because I think there's been enough back and forth between you. I think that question will be answered, and we can ask it again at the next agenda item, actually, of Lawrence. So Lawrence, will you park that in the back of your mind, the 6.8 million per annum question, and answer that for Councillor Clarence at that point, if that's okay?
Yes, if you let me know, Chair, when you would like me to actually cover that off, more than happy.
Well, you're coming on in about 30 seconds, so if you can hold that in your head, that will be just improvise. Okay, thank you very much, Amanda. Any more members?
May I just say, Councillor Arnott, thank you very much. I'm dishing out now because I want to go back to the overview and scrutiny committee meeting at Teambridge. Thank you very much for all of you members for my time.
Thank you very much. All right. Right. Any more members of councils, Amanda, who are lined up to ask questions?
There are not, no.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. In which case we go on to item 5, the Strata IT Director and Managers Report. And I'm assuming this is coming from Lawrence.
Yes, I'm hoping everybody can now see my screen. I've put together a few slides to give all the joint exec an update on what Strata have been up to identify some of the challenges.
Lawrence, it's 14 slides, isn't it? Just so everybody
I believe it might be. Remove. I'll fly through the placeholder slides, okay, for you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Okay, crack on. Thank you.
Okay, good. So, where we're up at the moment, a bit of a high-level summary of what we've been doing since the last joint executive meeting. The global desktop, global comms environments have been remain very stable during COVID. We're going through a very significant program of work to migrate from Windows 7 to Windows 10, which is a big transformational piece that we have to go through to ensure that councils are compliant with PSN. During that upgrade program, we've experienced some problems with screens freezing with compatibility of various elements of the software, and a bug in one of the software applications that has caused screens to freeze that has affected a number of offices. We're pleased that we've actually got a resolution to that now, and we're in the process of doing a rollout to over 2,000 devices to address the issue that there is with this software bug. The software manufacturer has now released a patch that enables us to fix the problem. It's created a huge amount of demand for us, but the underlying global desktop, global comms has pretty much remained 99.99% available throughout the last of the 6 months, which, as that underpins everything really the councils do, enables us to deliver the service to the officers. Obviously really proud of the success of that environment. The service desk team are seeing a huge amount of demand on us at the present time. We've got a number of very sizable projects underway. We've got the ECC Leisure project, the phase 2 of the ECC Agile project, the TDC Agile project, which is the delivery of approximately 100 laptops through to officers within the authority to enable them to work remotely. but also in the office as well. We've worked with East Devon to migrate a lot of the equipment that was built in Blackdown House to be able to support users working out of their own homes. So that negated the need for a big investment in laptops to support a number of staff, as we were able to reallocate existing devices. Plus, we've also undertaken this big program of a Windows 10 migration. We've got an annual health check underway at the moment. This is an annual requirement that we have to enable us to have a PSN accreditation. PSN stands for the Public Services Network Accreditation. That enables the authorities to connect to the DWP. That process is pretty much finished. We had a wrap-up call with SureCloud, who come in to do that assessment. And from my point of view, and I think the point of view of the officers, the Strata officers involved, it was, again, very successful. Obviously, their idea is to hack into the systems to try and find areas of weakness. And I think Robin will cover that off on one of the slides I've asked him to cover. We've seen a significant drop in print demand across the 3 authorities. As a result, we've engaged with TDC and with Exeter to talk about their long-term plans for print and whether they're starting to see a move to a lot of communications going out via a digital environment rather than via the paper environment that has historically been used. One of the other things we've also seen as well, with much more of a move towards digital, is what we call the ever-increasing data demands that there are on the 3 authorities from officers in the authorities, and the need for Strata to ensure that that data is available, is maintained, but is also kept very, very securely as well. This slide here is what we term a radar diagram. This really shows a measure of Strata over the last 2 years, and this is the availability of our environments that we deliver. The red arrow signifies really the period that we've been in the COVID-19 pandemic, pretty much showing that the outer ring represents 100%. This looks at the overall availability of the systems to support the work of the authorities. So pretty much over the last sort of 7-8 months, the availability of this system, as I said earlier, has been 100%. The center of the circle represents 96% availability. So, pretty much the systems are available, pretty much full-time to all the officers to support the work that you do. One of the key things, obviously, with the pandemic has been the ability for Strata to support remote workers, but also as workers were originally in the office and how they moved to be remote, and how over a period of time we've seen a migration of some officers back into the office environment. This represents the period from March the 18th through to basically a week ago. On a Tuesday, we take a snapshot. You can see the rapid move from people working in the office. So obviously originally there was about 12% of Teambridge staff working in the office. There was a rapid move over about a 10-day period to working remotely. But as we've seen over a period of time, we're starting to see a migration of approximately 50% of officers back into the office environment. For East Devon and Exeter, it's a slightly different picture. Again, the very, very rapid increase to remote working, but we've actually seen the stabilization of officers working remotely at about 75 to 77% of the time. So again, I thought that was quite interesting to be able to show you. Obviously, with the announcement that we're expecting from the Prime Minister tonight, it may well be that we'll start to see a change of more people working remotely again rather than returning to the office. But I guess we'll just have to see what that announcement is going to be. As with any fluid environment that we live in, certainly currently, IT becomes pretty much, an essential tool to support the work of the authorities, and our ability to be able to cope with the demands becomes of critical importance. The two images here really show the change in the demand for Strata services over that 6-month period of time. The number of incidents we're dealing with at the moment is very high. Quite a lot of that demand is down to the screen freezing issue, so we're hoping over the next few weeks we're going to see that dropping off. but we've also seen a significant increase in the number of service requests, people needing help, people needing IT, people needing training, etc., to actually enable them to use the environment that they've got created for them. We've also seen a significant increase in the amount of business change requests coming into Strata, and that's really to enable us to, help citizens become more digital, help the authorities dealing in a much more digital way with their citizens. And hopefully, whilst demand is incredibly high, Strata will remain very focused on obviously ensuring that we can keep up with that demand as it stands. I just wanted a little bit, I've asked each of the managers just to comment on a few areas of work that we've seen over the last few weeks. I don't know, Robin or Pete, probably Pete, could you possibly comment on virtual meetings and what we may potentially see is a move to hybrid council meetings and how we've supported the work of the authorities in that area? Pete or Robin?
Yep, sorry, audio issue. Yes, so very quickly we had to put together a project.
Sorry, Pete. Could you, Lawrence, if you're gonna, can you do that through the chair in future? Pete, could you just introduce? That's okay. Could you introduce your role, please, Pete, and then carry on? Thank you.
Of course. Yep. So I'm the head of IT solutions delivery for Strata. So I ran the project with Robin Barlow from Strata to introduce a system for virtual meetings. We did explore several products. The favoured product was Zoom, which I think a lot of members were already using. So we undertook an exercise of running lots of tests with the 3 democratic services departments, which we all worked together on. And then following that, lots and lots of test meetings with all the members. So it involved a lot of documentation, a lot of training, a lot of additional training for those of you who needed it. We also sat in on many of the meetings when they were going live, just to offer further support, so we could offer one-to-one support during the meetings themselves if any members were having difficulties. So since then, we've had pretty good success with Zoom. All the meetings are now being run over that, so that's where we are with that side. On the hybrid meetings, this is where some members or officers may be present within the council chambers and some may be working from elsewhere virtually, and all can join the same meeting. So progress has been made on that. At the moment, Teambridge are leading. They've have a system in place that's currently being tested, and early tests are showing that it's looking good. I believe they got a test meeting earlier in October, so we can report back then on how successful that was. Okay,
thanks, Pete. Lawrence, do you want to bring somebody else in as well at that point to enlarge on that?
Yes, I was just going to ask Adrian just to quickly cover off the Agile project for Teambridge, a very rapid mobilisation. So Adrian, what
we need to do always is introduce, because obviously there are people in their millions watching on YouTube. So if we could be careful to introduce who people are, just for them. Thank you.
Okay, Adrian Smith.
Oh yeah, I'm Adrian Smith. I'm head of support and infrastructure for Strata. So the TDC Agile project was an initial remit to deliver 102 laptops to Teambridge staff to enable more flexible and agile working. As of today, we've now delivered all of those laptops. Teambridge funded an extra member of staff to facilitate that in line with the way the council's delivered their other IT Agile projects. We've now extended the scope of the project, so we're going to be delivering an additional 30 laptops to help some additional staff. And alongside that, we also retrofitted 160 desks with docking stations so that multiple sites across the Teambridge estate are now fixed and ready for staff to work flexible and agile should the government discern that they are allowed to return to the offices. All in all, it's been successful and been quickly delivered on time and on budget, so win-win for us.
Thanks, Adrian. Back to you, Lawrence.
I'd like to introduce Martin Milmo. Martin is our head of the document centres to talk about digital mailroom. Martin.
Thanks, Lawrence. Right, the digital mailroom, as it indicates there, is we capture the post when it comes into the buildings at East Devon and Teambridge, and scan it and then send it directly on to whoever needs to see it, whether that's team members or individuals. Happens on the same day. Everything's then retained for 60 days and can be audited, and if needed, the hard copy returned to the customer. Since the early stages of lockdown, it's been very successfully applied in terms of tailoring it to each department's needs, and we continue to do that going forward with each council.
Thank you, Martin, very much. Lawrence.
I was just ask Adrian again if he could cover off Exeter Leisure.
So Exeter Leisure is quite a large project for us at the moment. It's a significant one. We're having to completely retrofit 6 leisure sites for Exeter City Council. The previous contract supplier removed all hardware and all IT, so it's essentially greenfield sites. So it's connectivity, hardware, training, everything from the ground up. As of today, we've completed the first 2 sites, which is Exeter Arena and the ISCA Centre. So from an IT perspective, they're going to be ready to open on the 28th. We're now focusing on the 2 next sites, which will be opening a week later. And currently, from an IT perspective, we're on track to open all 6 sites on time, and all the IT should be functional. So although it's had quite a significant impact on our resources, we have been able to reorganise and deliver the project in line with Exeter City Council's requirements. Okay.
Thanks, Adrian. Lawrence?
Thank you. I just wanted just to cover off what we're seeing at the moment as a data growth challenge, and maybe if people start to see some performance issues in global desktop, we might well be experiencing issues as a result of the astronomical data growth that there is across the authorities. The analogy that I'd like to draw is a grain of rice. A grain of rice represents 1 byte of data. When we took on the original contract in 2015, there was 55 terabytes of data across the 3 authorities. 55 terabytes of data, if you assume 1 terabyte of data is the equivalent to 2 container ships full of rice, that will give you some idea of the amount of data that there actually is. However, it's actually continued to grow. As of yesterday, we were at 164 terabytes of data. So that is equivalent to a 300% increase in the amount of data across the 3 authorities. That data needs to be stored, backed up, has to be replicated, kept secure, but also kept available to the authorities. So we can see at the moment there is a significant amount of data growth. And this is one of the challenges that all organizations face as we move forward, is that data becomes very, very important. And I'd like to just hand over to Robin Barlow. Robin is our head of security and compliance, because I'd like him to quickly cover off what we mean by the cyber threat and how we importantly protect data. And remember, we use the analogy of a container ship. We all know what happened to the Napoli and how long that actually took to clear up on the East Devon coast. Obviously, what we're really keen on doing is making sure that your data is kept highly safe, highly secure, but also highly available, and that we don't get a data version of the Napoli. I'd like to hand over to Robin Barlow.
Hi, yes, I'm Robin Barlow, Head of Security and Compliance. Yeah, and data, I usually refer to it as the crown jewels. It's the one thing you can't get back, and we have to protect and put as much behind that to manage that. We've got a slide up about Redcar, and unfortunately that's a council that to their cost, and it's a large cost, and the type of 10.4 million is one of the type of reported costs. They had a cyber incident. That could have come in for various routes. We would probably say mail. Email would be the main route coming through, but we can't divulge some of the information about how that happened. But anybody can get hit by a cyber campaign and attack that data. And with ransomware, in effect, it scrambles up that data into a way that unless you pay a fee, you're ransomed, you can't have your data back. And therefore, data backup becomes critical in terms of the way we manage the threat to the organizations to ensure that you can continue. Now, if Redcar had their backups working properly, they might have lost a few days' business. However, we can see months and months on that they have got systems back. They are online again, but they will probably be feeling the lack of the integrity of their data for many years to come, where they can find certain records, for example, there might be appeals, etc., and that information just will not exist. So One of the things that we've introduced with Strata is bringing the three councils teams together, and one of the things we specialize in is the data backups. We as my team do that. We don't let the technical staff or any of the others do it because we have this need to understand the threats, and we know that backups are the things. That's the one thing that will keep me awake at night if we have any problems with our backups. So that's what we do. Now, I've just mentioned ransomware, and it is an ongoing threat. It's probably the greatest threat. I was just noticing this morning, I've passed out to the team. It does actually have quite high consequences. Thankfully, not for us in this particular sense, but in the last couple of days, there's a hospital in Dusseldorf that had a ransomware attack that took their IT systems offline and resulted in a patient having to be transported 20 kilometers to another hospital, in which unfortunately they passed away in that process. So there are huge consequences. Thankfully for us, it's more about the data and our systems, but we do take this whole area very, very seriously. If you could have the next slide, please, Lawrence. Oh no, okay, there was an intermediate. In effect, the main threat is through emails, and we do actually have to do a lot of work in managing those emails coming through, because those are the types of phishing campaigns where they're trying to get to your passwords, etc., and also send the types of files that cause ransomware. So we spend a lot of time managing that particular side. I'm going to cover the PSN, and then I'm going to do this. So the PSN, Lawrence mentioned the Public Service Network. Every year we have this, what is easier to probably thought of as an MOT. The government require us, and it's quite sensible, to bring in an external company who specialize in all those type of cyber cracker, hacker type skills to try and find out where our weaknesses are. There'll always be weaknesses in organizations, and therefore what we need to do to address that. So that team has been in the last couple of weeks. They did find some weaknesses, as you would expect, but they found it much, much harder again this year. And every year they've been here, they've actually said how much more difficult it's become. This year, they actually had to use some prior knowledge from last year to actually break us. So that's a great stage, but I don't like it at all. We'll obviously work harder to make sure that even those little routes through are now covered off. It was quite nice from their perspective. They reckon we're in the top 10% of type of organizations they deal with. We have some of the lowest level of what they call patches. So those are those bits of software that the hackers will use to try and break into your organization, which you failed to update. That hospital example, unfortunately, that was something called Citrix. That's a system that East Devon used to use and many councils use. That was what was broken there. But it's very, very important we get on top of that side of things. So they were very impressed again with what we're doing. One of the areas that we can put lots of technology in place to support us, but it's the person sitting in the chair, the one who will click the link. And so one of the other things we're now rolling out, it's rolling out at this moment in time to all three councils. There's also a specific element for councillors as well. It's created by councils for councils, and it's called Dojo. And you can see the type of, it's a very friendly, short element of awareness that we can provide to all staff, just to try and bring that extra level up, to try and stop that link clicking and all those other types of things, which it's very easy to do as humans. We like clicking on things like that, but it's also can be very dangerous. So thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Robin. I'd like to introduce Peter Johns. Peter Johns took up the role having headed up the Skype for Business transformation project. Pete picked up the role as Strata IT Head of IT Solutions. Pete, over to you.
Hello, yeah. So we've introduced a new project framework for all our IT projects. So we've got roughly 50 projects in flight at the moment. So the project framework has been introduced purely to bring more consistency to our IT delivery in our projects. So what we're showing here, so in the top left there, you see the different, the 5 different hexagons. So basically a project will come in, we spend much more time now looking into what's definitely required from the customers, and we work together with the councils, what is required, how we're going to go about it, what the costs are, elements such as what the security implications are, the data usage, etc., how we're going to back things up, and how we're going to deliver it, so who's involved and when. We've got a much better framework for how we do the procurement, so we follow a much better process there. And when we get to implementation, We make sure that the user testing is done at much greater level, so when we go live with the new systems, that we don't have as many issues. And finally, we transition to go live. So we make sure all the documentation is up to date, the security testing is all done, the handover to service desk is done, and everything's been completed, and then the projects are signed off. And what you can see from the graph at the bottom there, the view of all live projects is where or how many projects we've got through each of those stages. And you'll see there's a huge number of projects in the implementation phase at the moment, which is probably always going to be the case. That's always going to be the longest phase. We do have some projects that do take a long time to complete, sometimes years. And on the right, you can see the breakdown of projects per council as well. So they're roughly even between the three councils.
Brilliant. Thank you for the update, Pete. Appreciated. One of the things that's really important for us to do is obviously measure the satisfaction of the end users. These are the officers of the councils. So when the officers raise an incident on Strata, when the incident actually is closed after it's been resolved, we reach out and we ask for, we get 4 questions answered. And anyway, we measure those on a monthly basis. We report it back via our monthly performance reporting. And the graph really shows that we now pretty much month on month, we're achieving an over 4.5 out of 5 user satisfaction. As you move up on each of those questions, the dark green at the top is the most recent month, which would be August. Again, it's really good to see. We used to measure based on smiley faces. We actually felt it was more appropriate to ask some questions. We look at those questions, we look at the responses, and obviously what we can do is help to inform how we improve as a business moving forward, because one of the things we want to continually do is just continually improving the service that we deliver to the officers and certainly hopefully to the councillors as well as we progress and as we develop as a business. Obviously, Strata is very important. The 3 authorities own Strata. Strata is its staff. Without the staff, then Strata would be in a far worse position. So therefore, what's really important to the management team is that we ensure that our staff are highly motivated, that they're communicated with, and that we keep them updated on what's going on. And certainly over the pandemic period, we've worked to try and keep them as safe as we possibly can. We commissioned a survey to be undertaken by East Devon based on a survey that East Devon had actually sent out to all their staff, and we actually measured the response based on the high level of response we got from Strata staff. Very encouragingly, the Strata staff felt that as a business we had responded with willingness and flexibility to actually support both the staff of Stratas but also the officers of the authorities throughout the pandemic. 94% that felt that as managers we were showing the capability and the confidence, bearing in mind we're a relatively young business, but we've actually got a lot of very experienced managers, that we were able to do what we had to do to support the authorities, that our values that were originally set up by the 3 authorities and which underpin Strata, they were able to enable us to deliver against the actions and behaviours during COVID, but also that we were effectively communicating. We put blogs in place, we have town meetings with our staff, and whilst the vast majority of staff are working remotely, I feel that the good feedback is that they really still feel for part of the business that we built, and that they feel very much involved in the overall success of Strata and the success hopefully we'll have moving forward. At the last meeting, we talked about governance. I know we spoke about some changes to the governance model. One of the things that has become very apparent is that through COVID, the reliance on IT is now exceptionally high. Based on the feedback from the joint scrutiny, where councillors felt that they should be very involved in the scrutinisation of Strata as a business because it was just so fundamental to the authorities. I know in the original paper that we put together outlining what we felt were changes to the governance framework, we actually feel as a board, we need to have another look at that and actually look at how we can support the authorities through better governance, potentially better scrutiny moving forward. And our aim as a board is to work with the authorities to identify a model that probably pre-COVID we felt could be changed, but maybe during COVID and certainly post-COVID, the importance of IT is widely recognised by the councillors, and hence they want to be very much involved in the performance and the overall governance of Strata. We're going through the business planning process at the moment, very important. We put together a time frame this year as to when the business plan will be created and when it will be submitted. Obviously, there's been a lot of changes over the last 6 to 8 months. What we originally intended to do at the beginning of the year has now changed quite considerably, but hopefully we can incorporate a lot of the changes that we've seen. And certainly I heard it said on a conference I was at the other day, the transformation inside public sector that was believed to going to be happening over the next 2 to 3 years actually happened over a 2 to 3 month period of time. And we need to make sure that Strata continue to be adaptable and flexible to ensure that we can carry on delivering that transformational change for the authorities. And that really was the end of my presentation. Mr. Chair, you asked about Strata delivering value for money. Would you like me to cover that off for you now from my point of view?
No, why not? But unfortunately, Councillor Clarence isn't here to hear it, but he can always watch it on YouTube. So yes, if you've got the sort of bullet point, quick answer to that,
yeah,
Lawrence, that would
absolutely.
be good.
So it's always been a very, very interesting question, and one that over the last sort of 2 to 3 weeks has really forced Strata as a business to work out what it is that we do, where have we come from, what is the value we deliver, both in terms of the service improvement that we've seen, but also from the financial aspects of Strata. What I've put together, and hopefully it's been circulated to the leaders, the chief, and also we responded back to Councillor Clarence, was 2 documents. One at a high level that talked about Strata value for money based on the original objectives that we were set. One of reduced cost, one of reduced risk, and one about providing an environment with the capability and capacity to support change and support transformation. So I went through that at a fairly high level, looked at the cost comparisons of what Strata costs today as to what it cost when it was originally set up. And we had a board meeting yesterday, and David Hodgson, who is Strata's Chief Financial Officer, actually worked through the figures. And based on RPI, Strata is delivering a cost saving in real terms of approximately £310,000 a year, based on the original budgets that Strata were given by the 3 authorities. So applying RPI and working back the figures, we are now delivering a service which is £310,000 less than the authorities were paying originally. However, we can't just talk about the cost savings. We also have to talk about the significant improvements in service. And as a result of that question, the managers and myself sat down and we actually worked through the 44 different areas where we believe that Strata has helped transform the authorities from where they were previously to where they are today. And I think we all came away from that exercise saying, wow, what a journey it's been. Not only are we saving money, but we're also greatly enhancing the services that the councils have. So have we achieved what we originally set out to do, and based on the original objectives of reduced cost, reduced risk, and deliver that capability and capacity? And if we say that is how we're going to measure value for money, well, I believe we remain very, very confident that we've delivered in all those aspects for the 3 authorities. And hopefully in the work that we've done, and if there's obviously any questions regarding that, we're more than happy to actually answer those questions that any of the councillors, the leaders, the chief execs may wish to pose for us. But I think we're rightly proud in what we've achieved.
Okay, thanks, Lawrence. I mean, it occurred to me that the 2 documents you presented and become available in the last 24, 48 hours
yes,
are a very good read. I'm just wondering, obviously there's stuff in there that may be a matter of commercial confidentiality, but I mean, how widely can we share that with the memberships of our councils in due course? I mean, you could obviously, you know, there's the option there for you to redraft slightly if you wished, but given that, you know, perhaps not all councillors are fully either engaged or understand, not your fault, but just because of the nature of the beast, what Strata does, it did strike me that those documents might be quite helpful for the Strata cause. But how do you feel about that?
Well, you know, I think it's a great reflection of what's been achieved. Obviously, we're comparing it to the position that it was in 2014. So I guess from my point of view, whilst obviously what we've achieved looks great, it's the starting point that I think I was nervous in sharing those documents, is whether you would want that starting point in the public domain to perhaps where we are today. And I didn't feel that was right for me to say, yes, just put it out there in the public domain, but happy to obviously debate and talk about it.
Can I ask Phil then and Alistair, having looked at those two documents, so they are very informative, giving Lawrence a chance to just give them a second reading. Do you think they'd be useful for your members as well?
Well, I feel sure I would have one or two members who would be interested. As long, you know, if they feel it's nothing sensitive, then issue it by all means. I see nothing wrong in that.
Okay. Alistair, how do you
so for myself, Paul, I've not seen these documents, so I can't really comment. But what I would say is that for my own view, as you may or may not know, I've always wanted to see much more of what Strata does actually out in the public domain, and I'd just like to see a bit of benchmarking. You know, though some of us are double hatters, and we work with SCOMIS, and which is Devon County's IT operator. I'd just like to see, I know how I feel personally, but I'd just like to see some proper benchmarking from Strata, just to show exactly where we stand against other IT services. Plymouth has got an IT service, and I think that would be a help. I think as far as value for money is concerned, we're definitely in the right place in terms of our budget, and in terms of procurement, I'm sure you, like us, have got very strong procurement policies, and we think our procurement is extremely strong, because it's not just Strata who are doing the procuring. We look at it as well. So I'd really like to see this much more out in the open.
Okay, thank you. Amanda, can I ask you, I know you're very kindly deputising today. Could we send those documents again that came yesterday out to Phil again? I don't know if he's got them, but also to Alistair and to Alan as well at Timbridge. And then maybe the three of us can just have an email later to work out how to send those out to our members. Because I think they were a really good read. And as Lawrence has said, he put a lot of work into it. I don't think there's anything in there that's too sensitive at all. I mean, what happened in 2014? You know, it was another decade, wasn't it, really? So, and then, as Phil says, there may be a few specialists who are interested in that.
Yeah, I guess from my point of view, we just have to be careful regarding the cyber threat. If you put things in the public domain about how you protect the authorities, suddenly there will be people trying to knock you off your pedestal. So again, anything related to cyber, I would not be looking to put in the public domain. And I spoke to Robin earlier on, and we felt that was important.
Understood. If you can come back to us then with a sort of an amended version of that is good for distribution, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, any other questions from the membership at all here?
Yes, please, Paul. I'd just like to ask Lawrence a little bit more around Teams, and exactly sort of where we're going on Teams. I think it clearly is a real issue. We've got lots of task groups, for instance, running, who would massively benefit from Teams, and just really would like to know what's happening. Officers tell me that they need this kind of data sharing that Teams can provide. I'm not suggesting that we start using Teams for this kind of meeting, though.
So basically, obviously taken on board the fact that Teams is now a widely used product. We can offer access to Teams meetings, so we're not stopping authority officers accessing Teams. We put together a working group of Strata officers headed up by Adrian Smith. Adrian is working with a third party called Modality. We've put in place a series of workshops with each of the authorities, really to get into what the requirements are. What we've found as we've spoken to organisations is organisations haven't really been particularly clear as to why they've bought Teams. So therefore they end up with a product that users get, but they don't really know how to use it. Probably very similar to sort of Skype for Business when we deployed it to the authorities, where we actually found that users struggled with Skype until we got into the pandemic, and suddenly everybody wants to use the functionality. So the workshops with the 3 authorities are set up for the 1st of October. As a result of those workshops, which we're running with Modality, and Modality have done a lot of work with British government on the deployment of Microsoft Teams, we're going to have a very, very clear understanding of not only what functionality there is with inside Teams, but also how do the authorities wish to use it. As a result of that, we will be able to scope out a Microsoft Teams project, and then obviously look to put the resources in place to actually start deploying Microsoft Teams to the officers of the council. What is important is that there are a number of different aspects to the Teams suite. There's 3 aspects. We will not be looking initially to replace the Skype for Business technology with Microsoft Teams technology. The main aspect that we're going to be looking at for Teams is one around collaboration. How do officers share documents? How do they make sure documents are available, updated, etc.? And that seems to be where we're seeing the big requirement from officers. But obviously, once we have the workshops, once we share the sort of functionality that is available, hopefully we'll get a much clearer set of requirements that then we can craft a business case and then ultimately look to migrate to this product, which is going to be happening anyway, because 2025 Skype for Business gets replaced by Teams anyway. So we're naturally going to see a migration to Teams, because that's the way Microsoft obviously would like us to
Okay, thanks, Lawrence. Just a little comment from me there, that I think in terms of the democratic part of all of this, and for the members in our meetings, Zoom has worked brilliantly. Teams hasn't, in my subjective experience. So please don't look to hurry us over to Teams. I don't know if Phil has anything to say on that, or any other questions.
No, I mean, if Teams can get more than 9 people on the page, because you've got to look at their eyes sometimes, you've got to look at people, they'd have a better product. But when they get to that, I think they may well get in.
There's certainly no plans that we have at the present time to move away from the Zoom platform. It's easy to manage, it's easy to use, and actually it supports the works of the authority very, very well indeed. So certainly not in the early stages. We'll be looking to move away. Absolutely.
Okay. If you do, please talk to those of us who have to chair meetings, because that's it's you know, it's not well. Actually, it's turned out to be relatively straightforward, but it's not without challenges on that. So we'd have to be very confident about Teams even in the long term. Alistair, were you coming back?
Thanks, Paul. Yes, when I was talking about Teams, I was talking about a collaboration product and a document sharing product. I having to chair meetings at county on Teams, give me Zoom any day, but that's just a small part of the functionality. But as Lawrence has just said, the simple fact is that Skype is going, and we know what Microsoft is like. Once something is on its way out, they tend to just forget about it. And for me, unfortunately, I have lots of meetings with officers on Skype, and that is also not nearly as good as Zoom, but that's what officers have been given. So yeah, for me, let's keep Zoom for this, but we need Teams to increase our capacity and workload.
Okay, unless there's any other questions, can I ask for somebody to move that we note Lawrence's report? It's going to be one of you two.
I'll move it, Chair.
Thank you.
In which case, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to give you a go, Alistair, but
it's all right. So, seniority, it's
yeah. Well, because we've still got Lawrence's any questions on the screen, we can't see each other properly at the moment. So, right, thank you, Lawrence. Oh, there we go. Propose a second and vote. Okay. Don't forget who's chairing this, Lawrence. You're a contributor, just to remind you of this. But thank you for all the reports and everybody who's spoken within that. And if you'd like to clear the screen, please, and then we will introduce the next item. So the next item is the Strata Finance Report, and I believe it must be coming from Dave Hodgson, if that's correct.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, this is the Q1 budget monitoring for this financial year. Before I start, I would like to just make clear to the three leaders and the chief execs that when Councillor Clarence talks about £6.8 million cost for Strata, that's the gross cost before we give you some of the money back. So in actual terms, the cost of Strata to the three councils after you get the refunds, after you get the £500,000 back up front, last year was around 5.8 to £6 million, depending on whether you include the mobile phones in there. So I think it's important to bear that in mind, that the cost isn't 6.8 million. It won't be this year. You will get a good proportion of that money back. Looking at this financial year, obviously Strata is aware, as we all are, of the challenging impacts of the coronavirus restrictions and the impact that's had on budgets at all three councils through losses of income. And Strata has put forward ideas of one-off savings to add an additional 320,000 to the proposed 696,000. So we're looking at delivering around £1 million worth of savings again. Again, it's important to note £500,000 of that's been upfront, so you're paying reduced quarterly charges to Strata, and then we'll deliver at the end. So looking at the first quarter, we are looking to be about 50,000 short on that target. It's quite a tough target we've set ourselves. However, we believe that we'll claw that back throughout the rest of the year with some further staffing changes that are being proposed. So although we're noting 50,000 at the moment, we do expect it to come in as close to the £1 million as possible, delivering. In the report as well, you've got the final approved accounts of Strata as signed off by our external auditors, Francis Clark. I know there were some questions at Strata Joint Scrutiny which you may be interested in about how Strata can possibly give a refund when its profit and loss shows £1 million loss. And effectively that's to do with the pension fund and the fact that we ignore the pension fund and the pension fund deficit for the purposes of calculating the refund. And that's due to the fact we're able to do that, and the external auditors are happy with that because of the guarantee that the three councils give to Strata in respect of the pension fund. So if Strata was to go under, and if you look at their statement of accounts, they're not the healthiest. We have a big negative balance sheet because of the pension fund deficit. We're protected by the three councils having promised to look after the pension fund deficit and to make it right, and that means that Strata wouldn't have a need to go under. That's the only thing. Our balance sheet would be positive if it wasn't for the pension fund, and as members are aware, we're part of the local government pension scheme, which isn't being a defined benefit scheme, isn't a particularly good scheme for a private sector company. So that's all that I plan to say, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Any questions? Chris, sorry, Phil, are you out there? Or Alistair, anything you'd like to ask Dave? No. Okay, can we note Dave's report with thanks then?
So I'm happy to propose that we note it.
Okay. Phil, are you minded to second that? Or?
Second, I'll second that, thank you.
Thank you, agreed then. Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, so now we go on to item 7, the Strata JEC report, Devon Audit Partnership Annual Audit Report. Is that you again, Dave, or do we have somebody else coming up on that one?
No, I think Lawrence.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So on an annual basis, Strata employ an internal auditor. They're called Devon Audit Partnership. They come in and they look at a number of aspects of Strata, very much like Ofsted in education. They actually are working with us throughout the year, looking at how we're performing around a number of aspects. And this year they looked at a number of aspects, one around cybersecurity, where we're working to keep the data, all the officers safe in the cyber world. They looked at the project management and solution delivery process that we worked very hard to put into place. And they also looked at the overall effectiveness of the IT delivery that we actually deliver to the three authorities. At the end of the year, they produce an annual report that is circulated out to the board, but also the chief execs inside each authority. And this year they identified that Strata, in all the aspects that they looked at, were of a good standard, but it was a good standard, but also an improving standard, working up towards that outstanding standard that we would all like to work towards. As a result, they state how Strata is performing, and their opinion is that Strata or the authorities should have substantial assurance that of the adequacy and effectiveness of the control frameworks that are in place to support the authorities and are delivered through Strata. So overall, very positive outcomes. Great that they're looking at the right areas and they're helping identify areas of weakness that obviously we can look to improve, but also in the knowledge that what we do gives you substantial assurance that your IT is kept safe and it continues to deliver to you night and day. And that was really the Devon Audit Partnership report that we've included in the overall pack. Is there any questions?
Yes, thank you very much, Lawrence. I was just wondering, so what we've got in the agenda pack is the summary, isn't it?
Yes, it's a summary letter, which is what they issue out to the authorities, but also to yourselves as council as well. There's a more detailed report, which I'm also happy to share as well, should that be required.
I'd quite like to, just out of interest, love to see it if we could. Seems like we ought to, since we're all in this together. Never just read the front sheet, I say. And okay, so Alistair or Phil, any questions?
No, I'm happy, but it would be good to see the full report, as you say.
Yes. What we did for East Devon is that our auditor came and presented to the East Devon Scrutiny Committee, because it was one of the things that East Devon wanted. I'm sure should either Exeter or Teambridge wish to invite our auditor to come and present, he would also be more than happy to come along and attend one of your scrutiny committees.
That would be great.
Okay, thank
November.
you. Yeah, good to have the long form document on record at our end as well. I'm sure Simon's got it already, but that would be great. Okay, thank you very much. I'll move this from the chair that we note this item. Thank you very much. Okay, right. In which case now, let me get the wording of this right as I enlarge my screen. So, item 8 regards the next agenda item, which is item 9, which is the business case for the new finance system. So we need to pass a resolution that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following item, on the grounds that it involved the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1, schedule 12A of the Act.
I'd move, Paul.
Thank you very much, Phil. Seconded, and I'll vote with that as well. So thank you very much. So, in which case,
on that note, please, Chairman, if I can interrupt, Chairman, please, if I can just move.
Please, thank you, Amanda. Yes.
I'll have to turn off the live stream comments, but I need to wait for your section 8 to actually be recorded. So I'll come back as soon as that's done. Thank you.